What's up, Gotcha Gamers, and you're probably here today to learn everything you need to know about your DR.RATIO, how to build them, everything you're going to need for them, and everything like that. But a big plus to this is if you're a JoJo's fan, he is also made for you as well. I mean, look how thick he is. Look at his arms. Look how beautiful he is. Look how masculine he is. He also summons Pillarmen in. Look at this. JoJo fans, if you know, you know. Look at that. If you're telling me that's not a JoJo pose, then I don't know what is. Also, like any other JoJo's fan, he also sucks as well. So, if you're into that, then hell yeah. But let's go ahead and hop into everything you need to know and everything that you need to actually build your DR.RATIO. But before that, we're actually going to hop into talking about what he does, because his full kit's in game right now. So we're briefly going to go over that, because that will kind of explain my builds we talk about later. Now let's just go ahead and hop into the skill first. Now keep in mind, everything he's going to be playing off the talent, which we'll talk about in a second here. Really, his skill just does single target damage to an enemy. The multiplier is really not that high. It doesn't do that much damage. The follow-up is where he gets all his damage from. Where things get more interesting, though, is going to be his ultimate, because he'll be dealing more damage to a single enemy and also inflicting them with a debuff called Wise Man's Folly. Basically, what this does is any enemy afflicted with Wise Man's Folly, if an ally attacks that enemy, he will immediately launch a follow-up attack. He can only do this 2 different times. It's kind of like Topaz's ultimate, where she can only activate Noombi 2 times with the enhanced state or whatever. So this is going to work the exact same way as that, but where everything feeds into is actually going to be his talent, because whenever he uses a skill, DR.RATIO has a 40% fixed chance to actually launch a follow-up attack against the enemy, and this follow-up attack is actually going to be dealing more damage than the ultimate itself, which is really funny, don't you say? So you want to be getting his follow-up attack as much as possible, but how do you increase his 40% chance, you might ask? Well, that's easy. All you need to do is have more debuffs on the enemy. The more debuffs mean the more chance you have. Each debuff you have on the enemy will actually add 20% to your fixed chance, so at a max of 3 debuffs, you will be getting guaranteed follow-up attacks every single time. But not only is this really cool, his bonus traces are really cool too. We're going to start off with the most lackluster one first, which I think is interference. When a skill is used to attack an enemy, there's a 100% base chance to reduce an enemy target's effect resistance by 10% for 2 turns. I mean, this is okay. It works. Like, most of our characters are built to inflict debuffs on the enemy every single time anyways, but if you don't have your characters built that well in effect res, then this can help. Now, hopping into what I think is his second best one is when DR.RATIO uses his skill. For every debuff on the target, his crit rate increases by 2.5% and crit damage increases by 5%. This can be stacked up to 6 times. Now, this stack does not go away, meaning if you attack one enemy with 6 debuffs on them, you will keep that the whole match, or if you attack an enemy 6 times with 1 debuff on it, you'll get there and keep this the rest of the match as well. This is really, really cool. This gives you guaranteed crit rate, crit damage, really helps out with building him out actually, which is when dealing damage to a target that has 3 or more debuffs. For each debuff that the target has, DR.RATIO will be increasing his damage by a maximum of 50%, and you get 10% per debuff on the enemy. Meaning if you have an enemy with 3 debuffs on them, you'll be getting a 30% increase to your damage. If you have an enemy with 5 debuffs on them, you'll be getting an increase of 50% damage. So this is going to be key to his synergies and who you actually run on a team with him. Now let's talk about some of his other traces here and other little notes here. He has a lot of crit rate nodes and a lot of attack percent nodes. I love to see this. This means you can build more crit damage into him, because he's actually getting 12% from these little bonus nodes right here, and on top of that, maxing out his bonus ability will give him an extra 15% crit right here. So it's really nice to see. You're getting quite a bit of crit right here just from using him all alone. He's getting 27% crit rate, so this allows you to actually be able to build crit damage into his main stats. So we'll talk about his builds in a second here, but that's really nice to see. Anyways, with all of his abilities out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about all of the materials you're going to need to actually build him up from level 1 to level 80, including his light cone and everything like that. Now, hopping into all of the mats he's going to need, he is going to need 3.9 million credits, 290 XP books, and these are like the 2 base things you need for every single 5-star character in the game. So just keep this in mind, because this stays the exact same for every single 5-star character in the game. This will obviously change with 4 stars, not the XP books. The credits will go down a bit, but for the every 5-star, this is what you're going to need. Now let's go ahead and talk about some of the things that change from character to character, like the level ascension materials and trace ascension materials. For his trace materials, you're going to need 12 of these little blue bug handle things. This is from the new Trace boss event in the game right now, the new weekly boss. You're going to need to farm the big bug man here to actually get this off here. You just get a couple per run, and you need 12 of them to actually max out all of his traces. And finally, for his level ascension materials, you're going to need these suppressing edicts here. You get these from this robot boss here in the Lafu. You're going to need 65 of these to actually bring him up to max level. So make sure you're farming these right now, because they're able to be farmed this is like a day's worth of grinding or 2 days worth of grinding. So yeah, that's make sure you get those. Now let's go ahead and talk about his trace materials he's gonna need now. For his class specific trace materials, he's going to need 139 of the hunt arrows, big hunt arrows, 69 of the medium hunt arrows, and 18 of the small hunt arrows. Now, if we're talking about his small trace materials, easy to get trace materials, he's going to need 73 of the big void spinny things, he's going to need 71 of the medium void spinny things, and he's going to need 56 of the small void spinny things. You know, the things you use for your MC to level their traces up? Those little spinny things, you're going to need those. I don't know the name of them, and I don't care of looking them up. But you need these little void spinny things to level him up. Now, let's say you don't want to just go for him, or you just don't want him. You're not settled with him. Say you saved your gems, you've got your free Dr. Ratio. Now, what do you want? You want his light cone. So you just go pull on his light cone banner. You get his best signature light cone, his best in slot light cone, to make him even better and to make your account even better. What are you going to need for that light cone? For that, it's going to be pretty simple. You're going to need 890,000 credits for that. You're also going to need 166 of the XP level up things for your light cone, the little weird camera reel things. Now, as far as those trace materials, you're going to need 15 of the big arrows, 12 of the medium arrows, and 4 of the small arrows. Hopping in to the smaller trace materials now, or the easier to get ones, it's going to be 14 of the big void spinny things, 20 of the medium ones, and 20 of the small ones. I'll go ahead and show up here on screen now everything that you need for your Dr. Ratio. If you plan on not just getting him from your mailbox, but also plan on pulling for his light cone and getting or just leveling up a 5-star light cone in general for him, this are the combined mats you're gonna need for that. And while we're on the topic of light cones, let's go ahead and actually talk about his light cones, his best in slot light cones that you can use for him. Obviously, his best in slot light cone is going to be his signature light cone. We can't talk about what it does, but come on, you put the light cone with the character's face on it on that said character. It's gonna work absolutely amazing for him, and I can see this being really, really good. Now, let's talk about some other alternatives. If you want a really good free-to-play light cone, cruising in the Stellar Sea can work wonders for him because it is giving him some more crit rate, which means you can build more crit damage and other important stats into his substats because it is giving you free crit rate, 16% for free, and if an enemy is below 50% HP, it's giving you an extra 16%, not to mention the attack bonus it gives you if you end up killing an enemy with him, which you'll probably end up doing because he is absolutely broken, OP busted, again, especially against single target enemies. And the reason why I bring up against single target enemies is because first of all, he is a single target damage dealer, but also it plays into what his other best light cone is, which is swordplay, because he'll generally be just attacking one enemy with him, which is normally a boss enemy, and you can be clearing up side adds with other allies. So yeah, swordplay can work really well for him if you're targeting just one person, which is kind of what he does. If you don't switch targeting much, this can work wonders for him as well. But with all of those light cones out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about my boy's best synergies now. Who does he work well on a team with? And as we mentioned before in the ability breakdown, he needs a lot of debuffs. So you're going to be wanting to run people that give him a lot of debuffs. So I think his best support here is going to be Silverwolf, actually. With the light cone as Resolute and Shines of Pearls of Sweat, the Luca light cone, I think this can make your Silverwolf absolutely pop off for him because she does give a debuff just about every single basic attack. She also gives effect resistance shred with her skill. She also does defense down with her ultimate. So she just gives an absolute shit ton of debuffs to the enemy and will be boosting him up to his maximum potential. And with adding this light cone on, you obviously add more defense shred, which means you're able to do more damage. It's multiplicative, so this is super, super good right here. And also on top of that, you're getting another debuff on the enemy, so very, very nice there. Now, other options you could run would be like an E4 Payla or just Payla in general because she does defense shred. You run this light cone. Honestly, if you're running anyone on the team, I would just recommend running this light cone with them as far as Hildy characters go because it does give you a free debuff on the enemy, which is going to be really, really nice. But yes, characters like Payla can work nice for him, or any dot character for that matter, especially Sampo. Sampo can do Wind Shear. Of course, Wind Shear only counts as 1 even if you have 5 stacks. And also you have his ultimate, which increases the dot on the enemy. Characters that freeze enemies can also be really beneficial for him because that's one free debuff right there as well. Really, like I said, any character that gives a debuff. Also, another great option you could run would be other imaginary units with them, especially someone like Yukong, alright? Because Yukong can provide an imaginary damage bonus to any imaginary character on the field, especially if you're running her with something like Planetary Rendezvous, which increases the damage type of that same typing. And also, Welt can be used on the team as well because you can use Resolute if you want on him, or you can use really any other light cone, but he does guarantee slow the enemy, and he also has a great time of breaking the enemy shields as well, which means if you wanted to run him on full Wastelander, that would be definitely viable to do. But if you've made it to this point in the video, then maybe you should consider subscribing, because you're already at like the 9-minute mark, and this would be really cool if you could subscribe, or you just got scammed and clicked on the timestamp to get to this point in the video. Anyways, thank you if you subscribed, and thank you if you're watching, but let's go ahead and talk about the part you most want to hear about now, which are those relics. Even though he does have the full set of Wastelander here, I don't actually recommend that. I recommend a 2-piece follow-up set, 2-piece Wastelander, because it'll be increasing your follow-up damage, on top of that increasing imaginary damage. Now, I'm not going to completely rule out the 4-piece Wastelander here, because it does give a 10% crit rate buff and a crit damage buff if you are imprisoning enemies. So if you're missing out on crit rate really, then obviously this can help. And I know it says debuff there, guys. You're going to be wanting to debuff the enemy anyways, because you're kind of dumb if you don't run anyone that debuffs with him, because you get a huge damage increase if you debuff the enemy. Anyways, that's what I recommend for the sets here. Now, maybe, just maybe, and you don't have to take my word for this, 2.0 could be bringing the Relic set, so yeah, you know, do what you will with that information. Anyways, back to the planar sets now. What do you want to be running as far as planar sets go? I think that's pretty sweet, pretty simple. I recommend just a Glameth. Glameth gives an attack % buff, and it gives a damage buff as well. Of course, you have to get really high speed to get the max damage buff that you would want, but I think a 12% damage buff is really nice, on top of that with a 12% attack buff. So I think this is just a pretty universal set for most DPS characters now. Although, if you don't want to run this set, you can opt in to run Salsado, because Salsado will be increasing your crit rate, which could come in clutch as far as building out your other substats, and also gives a 15% damage bonus to that follow-up attack, which is where literally I think 90% of his damage will come from, or most of it will come from anyways. Now, let's hop into the main and substats you're going to be wanting to run for your Dr. Ratio, starting off with the boots first. Now, for the boots, you're going to be wanting to run speed or attack. Obviously, if you're running Glameth, you're going to be wanting to run speed here. But if you're not running Glameth and he has enough speed in the substats, you could technically run attack boots here, or if you're running with a Bronya, you can run attack boots here to give him just an extra boost in damage. Now, for that chest plate, I would recommend crit damage. If you can't get enough crit rate in his kit, though, then you might need to run crit rate here. But crit damage, I think, is the most viable option here, because he does get a lot of crit rate from his substats, and just a lot of areas he can get crit rate from. Now, hopping into the chain, the link rope, I recommend running attack percentage here. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe you should run energy regen. I just think attack percentage in this situation would be better for him. And finally, for that sphere, you're going to be wanting to run imaginary damage sphere. Obviously, boost up that imaginary damage even more to make sure his follow-ups are juicy, juicy, juicy. Now, I know I say now a lot, but let's go ahead and talk about the final thing here today, which is his substats. Now, for his substats, a main focus on his substats are going to be crit rate, crit damage, speed, and attack percentage. These are the main 3 things, or main 4 things you want to be focusing on in his kit. Obviously, speed is a priority if you have Glameth, because you want to get those juicy bonuses there. But you do also want to make sure you have well-rounded out gear, meaning you have at least 2 of these substats at all times, like speed crit rate, speed crit damage, speed attack, something like that. Make sure you have 2 or even 3. 3 is even more godly. Of course, 4 is a perfect piece, but you know how it goes here, guys. Just try to focus on getting 2. 3 is great, and then 4 is perfect. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for my little guide today on Dr. Ratio before he releases. As you know, you're a JoJo fan, so he's big, thick, burly, and he sucks a lot of cock. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will catch you guys in the next one later, guys. Bye-bye.